someone gave me some Mirlitons. They look like this. And so I asked this friend of mine to show me how she makes her casserole. It's a stuffed Mirliton, and it has shrimp in it. And you can either put it back into the shells and bake it, or you can just bake it in a casserole dish. The Mirliton, also known as the coyote squash, it spells Chayote, I believe, and it's a vegetable, it grows on a vine, and they originated from Central America, and they're also known as the official squash of New Orleans because they're used a lot in the New Orleans cooking. So I am going to get a new recipe and I am going to share it with you. So the first thing we do is I've washed these and I'm going to cut them in half. And we're going to put them in a big pot. And I have a big stock pot here ready because I'm not sure how much room I'm going to need. This is what they look like on the inside. Yeah, these are, if you tasted one raw, it would taste almost like a green cucumber. But they're very good when they're cooked, and especially with the shrimp stuffing in it. It was excellent. So that's the recipe that we're going to make. So I'm going to cut all these. You don't peel them. I guess you could peel them, depending on what you're doing with them. But for this dish, you cut them in half. And this one's kind of tough. And you put them in a large pot and cover them with water and boil them until they're tender. And then we're going to scoop the meat out and add it to our dressing and our shrimp. So for right now, I'm just getting ready to boil these. Here's the recipe for 6 of the Mirlitons. So I have the Mirlitons cut in half, washed, cut in half, and covered them with water, and they're boiling. When they're fork tender, then you start adding your other ingredients, which are 3 cups of squash, 12 ounces of the herb seasoning, 1 onion, half cup of green onions, 2 cloves of garlic, 2 tablespoons of parsley flakes, and a dash of lemon juice, and the pound of shrimp cut into pieces. And we're going to mix all that together, and then we'll add some chicken broth as needed. What you want is you want to have the stuffing moistened, but you don't want it wet. You don't want it floating in chicken broth. You just want it moistened. You don't want it to be dry. So then when all that is mixed together, we'll stuff it back into the Mirliton shells, like stuffing twice-baked potatoes. If you like spicy foods, you could add a little bit of the Tony Chachere's New Orleans style seasoning, or you could use maybe a 1/4 of a teaspoon or even an 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, or something spicy if you like spicier foods. Now I'm not going to add any in mine because I don't care for the spicy foods, but for right now I'm going to chop up the shrimp, and I'm going to start sauteing the vegetables. Okay, so I have about 3 tablespoons of canola oil in this Dutch oven, and it's getting hot. And I'm going to go ahead and put my onion. This was 1 large onion that I cut into pieces, chopped. And I'm going to cook the onion until it's tender. And I'm going to add my green onions. And to that, I'm going to add 2 cloves of garlic. And 2 tablespoons of parsley. To this mixture, I'm going to add a pound of shrimp that I've cut into bite-sized pieces. And while this is cooking, I'm going to add just a splash of lemon juice. Probably not more than a teaspoonful. Okay, so the vegetables and the shrimp are done. So I'm going to add about half a cup of chicken broth. And now I'm going to add the stuffing. So this is how the onions and the shrimp mixture looks. And to this, I'm going to add the stuffing mix. And we just want the breadcrumbs to be moistened. So I'm going to add just a little bit more chicken broth, probably another quarter to a half a cup. I think we're going to need the half cup. Going to add just a little bit more. A little bit more chicken broth. It's probably going to be close to about a cup and a half of chicken broth for the whole batch. So now I'm going to set this aside and work on the Mirliton. The Mirliton is done. It's fork tender. So I can push a fork easily all the way through it. Alright, so I'm going to take a spoon and scoop out. It's like the core of an apple. You just have to get that little core out of there. And then we're going to, as if you've ever done twice baked potatoes, you just scoop the inside, and that's going into our stuffing. That's kind of hot. So I'm going to scoop the inside out. And any juice that's in there, leave it, keep it. And the flesh. And you just save the little shell. And we're going to get all these done. Now the shell can be eaten. You don't have to throw it away. This is really quite easy. I thought it was going to be harder than this. More complicated. Not as bad as I thought. And there's a lot of water coming out of the squash. If you can see inside the bowl, it's a lot of liquid there. Okay, we need to add the Mirliton to our vegetable and breadcrumb mix. So that was a total of about a cup and a half of chicken broth that I added, and with the water that cooks out of the squash, Mirliton, it's got plenty of moisture and it's just about the right consistency. And one of the best things about being the cook is that I get to taste. Okay, I'm going to add a little salt. And a little pepper. So this is the consistency we've ended up with. It's like thick mashed potatoes. When I put the squash in, there was a lot of water that cooked out of it, and I put all that water in, and it made it a little too loose. So I added some plain breadcrumbs, probably a cup of the plain breadcrumbs to get it back to the right consistency. So it's like mashed potatoes. So now I've just turned the oven on to preheat to 375, and now I'm going to stuff the mix into the Mirliton shells and bake them 20 to 30, probably take 30 minutes to brown. Everything's done, so there's nothing that has to cook, it just has to brown. I'm going to taste one more time. I did add a half teaspoon of Tony Chachere's original Creole seasoning mix, and I think it's just perfect. Just a touch of heat. Okay, so I have a little of the stuffing left, and I'm going to put it into a baking dish. And put it into the oven with the Mirlitons. That looks like a lunch one day. Okay, so here we go into the oven. 30 minutes. Okay, so our stuffed Mirliton is just out of the oven and it looks delicious.